After months of suspense, pressure and tariff threats, the US-India trade deadlock is finally over. And the announcement didn't come from negotiations or joint statements. It come from what is being said that from Donald Trump himself. In the late-night political bombshell, US President revealed that a direct phone call with Prime Minister Narendra Modi sealed the long-pending trade deal with immediate effect. Now, what is being said is that the trade deal, posting on Truth Social, Donald Trump said he spoke to Prime Minister Narendra Modi, calling him one of my greatest friends and a powerful and respected leader. And he then made the headline move. The United States will now charge India a reduced reciprocal tariff of just 18%, down from 25%. For Indian exporters, this is instant relief. After months of uncertainty and fears of trade disruptions, clarity has finally arrived, especially for sectors like engineering goods, textiles, chemicals and auto components that rely heavily on the US market. But that's not all. In a major reversal, Washington has also scrapped the additional 25% penalty imposed on India over its purchase of Russian oil. According to US officials, this rollback follows India's commitment to stop buying Russian oil and instead source energy from the United States and potentially Venezuela. This marks a dramatic climb down from August 2025 when Trump had threatened tariffs of up to 50% on Indian goods. Now comes the quid pro quo. Trump says Prime Minister Modi has to commit that India will buy around $500 billion worth of US goods, spanning energy, technology, agriculture, coal and more. Even more striking, Trump claims that India will move to zero tariffs and non-tariff barriers on US products. Prime Minister Modi has welcomed the deal, thanking Trump for what he called as a historic reduction in tariffs. Prime Minister Modi also said that he had a wonderful conversation with dear friend Trump and thanked him for behalf of 1.4 billion people for a reduced tariff of 18% on Indian goods. He did not mention the trade deal at all in his post on X. Modi also did not comment on Trump's claim that in their conversation, the Prime Minister agreed to stop buying Russian oil and purchase much more energy from the US. Now, responding to the announcements, Sergio Gore took to social media platform X to underline that the personal rapport between the two leaders and the strategic promise of the partnership. He wrote, President Trump genuinely considers Prime Minister Modi as a great friend and the relationship between the United States and India has limitless potential. Lowest tariff rates in Asia and just 18%, India has edged ahead of key regional competitors, gaining a clear advantage in access to the American market. From tariff threats to trade thought, Trump and Modi may have just reset the economic equations. We are now joined by Ambassador Ashok Sajana, former Indian diplomat. Ambassador, how do you in fact see this particular deal in a larger context of geopolitical trade and also geopolitical situation that we've seen in the world? And at the same time, India had, unlike other nations, had taken a very long time to negotiate with the US administration, and there was talks about it being reaching a deadlock and not moving forward. And then suddenly you have this kind of an announcement that is made. So how do you see this entire thing? Have we been able to put across our point that we are independent when we come to our talks of trade as well as how we go about with geopolitics across the world?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on the show. I don't know whether I'll agree with you when you say that, India took a long time in negotiating. I think India had put forward in terms of what it was able to offer and what it wanted from America. During the negotiations, the 5, 6 rounds of negotiations that took place from March last year till about July, August. And it is my understanding that for all practical purposes, the deal was ready by the beginning of July last year, and it was lying on Mr. Trump's table for his signature. The negotiators on the American side, whether it was the USTR or the negotiators, they were also happy and satisfied with the deal because it was a win-win arrangement. But for Mr. Trump, for his own reasons, and we could go into it if you so desire, but basically, the fact that India did not give credit to Mr. Trump for his contribution in terms of stopping the conflict between India and Pakistan in May of last year, as also the fact that Mr. Trump was able to extract one-sided deals from all the other countries that he had negotiated with, getting unilateral advantage, whether it was from the European Union or Japan or South Korea, or for that matter, even developing countries like Indonesia and Vietnam. And he was able to announce that they had permitted duty-free access of American goods into the market, while United States was imposing tariffs of 19% on Indonesia, 20% on Vietnam, etc. So, for these two reasons, I think Mr. Trump wanted more so that he could announce to his MAGA base that he had unilaterally won advantages from India. That was not done. And I think right now, what you mentioned about the geopolitical changes, the turmoil that is taking place, the fact that India has signed the, what is called the mother of all deals, that is with the European Union. Also, looking at the fact that the closest allies and colleagues of the in the Western Hemisphere, Mr. Trump's closest allies,
Right.
Mark Carney and Keir Starmer going to China. So I think he found that his leverage was slipping, and he had to have a piece of this action.
Right.
And that's why this change has taken place.
Right. Stay with us, Ambassador. We have some more news coming in from the markets. A strong endorsement of India-US trade breakthrough from Wall Street. According to Goldman Sachs, the newly announced US-India trade deal is expected to add around 0.2 percentage points to India's GDP. Goldman Sachs now projects India's GDP growth at 6.9% for the current year of 26, citing lower trade friction, improved export competitiveness, and stronger investment sentiment. For this, we are joined by my colleague Karthik Malhotra, who joins us with the latest on this. Karthik, there has been a lot of talks with regard to the tariffs and how its impact has been. The lifting of the tariffs is the kind of impact now everybody is looking at. Jump on the horse when it is galloping, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely right. That's pretty much the sentiment which is visible, and what we are seeing right now is pretty much a knock-on impact of, of not those tariffs coming down to zero, but of course, some relaxation from 50% to 18% is being seen by these international brokerages and global institutional banking institutions, etc., as a big positive for India's export story. In fact, today, India's textile stocks are all locked in upper circuit. They've all hit the 20% upper circuit on the BSE index. So what you're seeing right now really is a sort of recalibration happening between brokerages, banks, etc., who had factored in the 50% tariff to stay on for India, which now being slashed to 18% is just getting all those, projections revised. And Goldman Sachs being the first to release a revised estimate for India's growth. And this calendar year, they work the Jan to December cycle. This calendar year, from the earlier projection of 6.7%, Goldman Sachs is now looking at 6.9% as India's real GDP growth. Now, add to this, Varghese, there's also excellent news coming from the stock markets and not just the textile sector. In fact, the entire BSE listed companies have received as much as almost a 20 lakh crore rupee bonus today by way of this trade deal, at least having been agreed upon between India and the US. So from about 455 lakh crore rupees, the BSE listed companies are now staring at a valuation of about 475 crore rupees or so. So that's a 20 lakh crore rupee increment. Textile sector being the biggest beneficiary, and tying it back with Goldman Sachs, and I'm sure we're going to receive a plethora of these revisions, through the day and through the week, where we are looking at the 4% exports to US actually increasing a notch higher and overall contributing to about 20 basis points. That's about 0.2% to India's GDP growth.
Also, Karthik, we have seen how this particular issue has been there for almost quite some time. Yeah. And we've seen how it has been a protracted negotiation that has been there. $500 billion to be invested in the US. Defense component is where a lot of money does, in fact, that we do have a defense component that goes in this trading relationship. But what are the other sectors that we can see this kind of an investment into the US?
So, I'm not sure that we are really talking investments right now because from what I read from the US President's post on Truth Social, he's saying that $500 billion of purchases is what India is going to make. Remember, it's slightly different from what we heard in the case of Japan and South Korea, where there were investment expectations of about $550 billion and $350 billion respectively. But what we are picking up right now, at least the only sort of, information we have is from the US President's Truth Social post, and that suggests that India is going to buy $500 billion worth of American goods, not necessarily invest in the American market. So, but $500 billion, we don't know whether it's over a period of 5 years, over a period of 10 years, for eternity. Those details are still awaited, as we are also awaiting some clarification and some further details from the Indian side. But defense was in fact not one of the sectors that were mentioned in that Truth Social post. It mentioned coal, it mentioned energy, it also mentioned technology, and finally it mentioned agriculture, which of course was a strong hard line which India had drawn initially when negotiations were kick-starting and as negotiations progressed over the last 11 months. But defense is, as per some expert analysis, defense could be outside of this $500 billion, but whether or not we have committed, and that's the term that Trump has used, whether or not we have indeed committed to $500 billion of American purchases is something that we'll have to wait for the fine print to tell us.
Thank you, Karthik Malhotra, for in fact joining us. Ambassador Ashok Sajjanar, who is also with us. How do you in fact see some critical aspects of our agri sector, especially those are the ones where we had our reservations when it comes to the Americans who had been trying to actually push their agricultural products into our markets. But that is where we have probably drawn a red line, and also at certain places we are ready to give them a kind of a market access. How do you see particularly the agri sector that could have been negotiated with?
Yeah, as far as agriculture is concerned, we need to recognize that it's a very broad sector. You cannot say, I think it'll be not very accurate to say that, we have put the shutters down on the whole of the agricultural sector, because there are certain items which we get from there, which we do not get from other places. And in any case, as far as oil is concerned, palm oil is concerned, pulses are concerned, we are importing huge quantities of these items because we don't produce them here. So, there's no risk, there's no threat to our own farmers, our own agricultural producers in those. There are other items which we have in any case been importing from there and from other sources. For instance, I remember when I used to be in the Ministry of Commerce many years ago, we had allowed access to the Californian almonds coming from the United States to India, and they continue to come. So they can come in somewhat larger quantities. We do import apples from other countries. So if there are apples we are importing from the United States, I'm sure it's not going to do much harm as far as our own agricultural, our own apple producers, because there are different segments to which they cater to. So I think there are certain elements, but of course, things like milk is not to be got, GMOs are not to be got, those which are sensitive sectors, those we make sure that they don't come into the market, and those are where we would have drawn the red lines. And this would have been made very clear. As far as soybean is concerned, getting that for use in certain other agricultural products in some way. I think the negotiators would have seen, would have consulted with the stakeholders and would have taken decisions. But I think as far as our red lines are concerned, those would not have been breached. But again, we have to really look at the finer print, read between the lines what is written. I would be very loath to go and sort of, treat what Mr. Trump has written about $500 billion of imports, of technology, of oil, of coal and agricultural products as, the final word, as the biblical truth on that. And, start discussions on that basis, because we know that Mr. Trump is given to, great exaggeration and hyperbole and stretching the truth a great deal, to put it mildly. And this whole thing about 0% tariff also on American products. I will take it with a bag full of salt because I don't think India would under any circumstances agree to that. We have been engaging in a large number of trade deals, free trade agreements with a large number of countries, EU, India being the latest one, but there are others, UK, New Zealand, Oman, etc., etc. And I'm sure we have not given in to those countries on these items. I don't see any reason to have given in to the United States. So I'll wait for the final details. I will wait for my government to tell me what has been agreed to, and I would really like to comment in terms of what commitments we have made on imports from the United States. But at the moment, the headline news is 50% comes down to 18%. That has given this boost to the markets, and I warmly welcome that.
Well, thank you, Ambassador Sinha, for in fact joining us. We will in fact keep tracking this story as well as it comes in with more details on how the trade deal will in fact benefit India.